Hello, and welcome back to episode 13 of Pressing Positivity. So today I'm going to be talking about being in charge of your own happiness. And if you're on the internet, you've probably seen this as a meme, or maybe you've read an article or two about it. I saw this meme for the first time several years ago, and at first I was like, yeah, be in charge of your own happiness. That makes total sense. But as I thought about it more, it led me to question whether this is actually helpful or actually harmful. So I've been thinking about it recently, and I've done some digging into it, and I'm going to share my research with you as well as my own thoughts and opinions so that you can make an educated decision, whether it's harmful or helpful. So this whole concept of being in charge of your own happiness is based around the idea that happiness is a choice. And in some respects, I agree with that, and in others, I don't. For example, I've known people who sit around and watch the news all day long, or they consume a lot of mainstream news and they feel depressed. And that's because they're focusing on a lot of depressing things and they wonder why they're not happy. So in that way, you could say that they're choosing to focus on negative things, and if they stopped focusing on so many negative things, then happiness would be a choice because they would feel more happy focusing on less negative things. However, there's a lot of people who feel unhappy due to situations that are out of their control, and in that way, I feel like happiness is not a choice that they can make due to extenuating circumstances that are out of their control. And to say that happiness would be a choice at that point, it might make a person feel like they're failing to, conjure their own happiness. So I want to get more into this, and we're going to do a deep dive today into it. I kind of fell down a bit of a rabbit hole while I was researching this, so bear with me because I've read a lot of articles, and some of them are scientific, some of them are just like blogs, and it's led to a lot of opinions. I really feel like someone who's looking to help themselves and trying this whole being in charge of your own happiness and being responsible for your own happiness, who read some of these articles, it could actually be damaging to them. Because if you search for this topic, then one of the first things that you see is that your own happiness is your own choice. And I feel for some people that this could be like they're failing. They will feel like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm failing to make myself happy. But that's not actually the case for most people. Because there's been a lot of shit happening in the world for the past couple years, and it's been really difficult for a number of people, and even the people who aren't directly affected, seeing everything what's going on and all of the unknown and all of the kind of just terrible situation has been really unsettling for most people. So what would you have to do in order to be happy? You might have to just be completely ignorant, blissfully unaware of everything that's going on in the world, because us as humans, when we know things, when we hear about what's happening to maybe people that we know or what's going on in the lives of people around the world, it's hard to just be happy, and that's okay. It's okay to have compassion. It's okay to have sympathy and to be able to relate to or feel bad about things that are happening to people around us, people in our lives, etc. And that doesn't mean that you're failing to make yourself happy. It means that, you're a person with empathy and compassion. So while I enjoy the concept of being responsible for your own happiness, this is one of the downsides of that because it's not always possible. And another one of the main things that comes up when you search this topic is choosing what to accept and what to let go. And in some way, I agree with this because I feel like if we're holding on to a lot of negativity, then we're going to feel bad. And I totally agree with letting things go because, what's in the past is in the past. It happened. And if you're feeling bad about something that happened, then you can work through it. But just letting something go isn't always possible. It's a process. And you have to give yourself time to process things. So if you were researching, being in charge of your own happiness, and you saw this, then you might feel like, okay, I'm just going to let it go. And that's not going to be really a long-term solution because you have to process things. It's takes time to let go of things, especially things that really affected you. It takes time to let them go. So to just say, oh yeah, but just let it go, I think that that's not the greatest advice in the world because you have to respect the process. You have to give yourself time to process emotions, to get through them. We don't just get over things. We don't just get over it. And I really hate when people always are saying, oh, it's time to get over it. No, you have to give yourself time to get through it. You have to process those things before you can let go of them. So if you're someone who's holding on to negative things and it's making you feel unhappy, then you can be responsible for your own happiness by allowing yourself time to work through things and beginning the process of working through things. And in that way, you can be in charge of your own happiness. But just to accept something or to let something go, I think that that's going to be not the correct way of getting through something that's really affected you. And being responsible for your own happiness also means that you are responsible if you're unhappy. So if you believe that you are responsible for your own happiness and you're not happy, then you're going to be blaming yourself for that, which I feel is a really unhealthy thing. Like I mentioned, most people who are feeling unhappy are unhappy for reasons that aren't their responsibility, for reasons that are out of their control, or maybe reasons that they feel that they don't have control over. So maybe instead of the idea that we're responsible for our own happiness, we could admit that we are responsible for our own personal growth. Because I feel like when we grow as a person, we're automatically going to feel happier because we're growing as a person. And when you're growing as a person, you're meeting your goals, you're doing what you really set out to do, and that's going to make you feel happier. Like, for example, procrastination. It's a big thing, and actually most people that I know procrastinate a lot, and that is a huge thing that can make people quite unhappy in the long run. Procrastination is an issue for most people. You might hear a lot, stop procrastinating and start doing. Or there is a quote from, I believe it was Einstein, who said, never put off till tomorrow that which you can do today. And that's something that I remind myself of a lot when I am feeling like I'm procrastinating. Like, for example, I was kind of wasting time today before I recorded this podcast, and I asked myself, what am I doing? Because I have a lot to do today. So what am I doing just sitting around and not doing much at all? I was definitely procrastinating, so I forced myself to just do what I need to do and start getting on with it. And here I am now recording this podcast. But yeah, I feel that taking responsibility for your personal growth is a much better ethos than being responsible for your own happiness, because a lot of the times the reasons that we're unhappy, like I said, are out of our control, and you are not responsible for things that are out of your control. And here's something else that you're not responsible for. I read a study from Harvard University, and 50% of your happiness is determined by genetics. It's genetically determined, 50%. 10% of your happiness is just determined by circumstances, and 40% of your happiness is determined by your actions and your attitude. So 50% is a huge amount. You know, it's half of your happiness is determined by your genes. So if you're someone who is feeling chronically unhappy, it might have a little bit less to do with you being responsible, because who is responsible for their genetics? Literally no one. But 40% of your happiness being determined by your actions and your attitude, that goes back to being responsible for your personal growth. If you're growing as a person, you're meeting your goals, you're not procrastinating, or you're trying not to, then that is going to be the action/attitude. You know, you don't have to walk around and just be happy all the time or force yourself to be happy. You just have to have the mindset that, you know, you're going to try. And a little bit later in this episode, I'm going to get into some tools that you can use for, you know, personal growth. But I found this study by Harvard very interesting because it wasn't like a top search result. So there were a lot of blogs and articles that I felt might be damaging to people who are going through a hard time to read that. And then very much later, I found the study by Harvard, which I feel for this topic might actually be a more important article to read than the 7 ways to start being in charge of your own happiness, or why you are responsible for your own unhappiness, etc., etc. And a lot of the articles published on this topic too are really contrary. The information that they're giving is quite contrary. And one of the things that I read is that your partner is not responsible for your happiness. And while part of me agrees with that, the other part of me thinks that when you're in a relationship, you are kind of responsible for each other. You know, you're supposed to take care of each other. You're supposed to be partners. I mean, if you're in a committed relationship, then that person is going to be the largest influence in your life, like about everything. You're going to be talking to them, hopefully, about everything what's going on with you. And if you're in a relationship where you can't talk to your partner, then that's, you know, a big thing. You have to be able to talk to your partner, and your partner has to be able to listen to you. So while your partner isn't necessarily responsible for your happiness, they are a big part of helping you be happy. And your partner should be doing things that make you happy. Your partner should be wanting to make you happy. That's what I truly believe. When you're in a relationship, those should be things. So while your partner might not be ultimately responsible for your happiness, I think that when we're in a committed relationship, that we're both responsible for making each other happy. And if you're experiencing unhappiness and you are in a relationship, then I encourage you to talk to your partner about that, because that should be the person who we go to whenever we're feeling negatively. And that person should be able to listen to us and help us through these hard times. I know personally, when I'm going through a hard time, knowing that I have someone there for me makes me feel a lot better and a lot happier. So in that way, I do think that your partner is responsible for your happiness, to be honest. I mean, when you make a commitment to somebody, then you are responsible for not making them unhappy and for helping them be happy and helping them grow as a person. Your partner should make you a better version of yourself. Your partner should help you reach your goals and help you become the person that you ultimately want to be. That's what I truly believe. That is a good partnership. And if you disagree with me on that, I would really encourage you to reach out and let me know. I love to hear opinions that don't align with mine. I love to consider other people's opinions, especially when they're contrary to my own, because I'm pretty sure that the things that I just said are going to be unpopular opinion with some people. And that's okay. I totally encourage that. So moving on, there is a theory, a 3-element theory to happiness, and that is positive emotion, engagement, and meaning. So what they're saying is that if you have a positive outlook, then you're going to be happier. And when you are dealing with other people, if you're actually engaging with them and it's meaningful, then those are the three elements that are going to make you most happy. And reading about this, they kind of made it like a blanket formula for happiness. And I completely disagree with this. And here's why. Because some people are complete introverts. And an introvert is not going to find happiness in having like meaningful engagement conversations with strangers. Because that's basically what they're encouraging you to do, is have meaningful and deep conversations with other people. And for an introvert, I don't think that that is a path to happiness. So again, for like an introvert reading this article, they might feel bad about themselves, or they might start blaming themselves for their own unhappiness because this isn't the kind of thing that would make them happy. So forcing themselves to try to engage with someone and have meaningful conversation, that's not going to make them happy. So if that's you, then don't feel bad, because it's not a blanket for everybody, even though they're trying to sell it as one. For someone who is an introvert, I think that focusing on your own personal goals and your own personal growth is what will make you more happy. And I really encourage that. Because none of these things are going to be a blanket formula for all people. They are like, everybody is an individual. So your own happiness is individual to you. There's not one formula or one solution that fits all humankind. Reading these articles was really a trigger for me, because I remember being younger and kind of like naive and new to the workings of the world and looking for self-help and reading self-help books, and they were giving me advice in these self-help books that was not right for me. And you know, when you're younger and impressionable and you don't understand that not everything is right for everybody, and you're looking for help, and you're reading these kinds of things, it can be very damaging. Like, you know, if it's not working for you, you can start to think like, oh, what's wrong with me? It must be me. You know, this is the doctor who's published this book, and what's wrong with me that these things don't work for me? But that's not the case. There is nothing wrong with you. Everybody is an individual, and we have to try things, find what works for us, and what doesn't work for us, we can just discard it. But none of these things are, it's not going to be a solution for all people. And that is okay. I'm going to move on now to an article that I read that was entitled 7 Ways to Be in Charge of Your Own Happiness. And I'm going to tell you the 7 ways, and I'm going to let you know my opinion about this, because I have quite a large one. So the first thing that they recommend is to choose your friends carefully. And I actually completely agree with this one. I think that, like I said earlier, that people around us really affect our own happiness. And I think that choosing friends who you can have deep and meaningful conversations or connections with, and people that you can trust, is paramount. And I'm contradicting myself now, because I just said that for introverts. And like I said before, not everything that I'm saying is going to be right for everyone. So if you're a person who thrives off of friendship and having people around you, then choosing the right friends is huge. It's a huge deal, because you need to be able to trust those people, and having kind of friends that are just, you just kind of shoot the shit with and you talk about nonsense can be fun sometimes, but that's not going to bring you true joy and true happiness. Someone that you can do that with and also have deep, meaningful conversations with is going to provide you more happiness in the long term. So I think that choosing friends carefully is good advice, not just for people who are looking to be in charge of their own happiness, but for everybody in general. The next thing on this list in this article is find the right partner. And I hate this one. I really hate it because it's like insinuating that you need to have a partner to be happy. And I completely disagree with that. I think that you can find happiness within yourself, inside yourself. I think that you can make yourself happy and you don't need another person to actually do that. So I don't think that finding the right partner is a way to be in charge of your own happiness. But I would say that not being with the wrong person is a good way to be in charge of your own happiness. So some people are with the wrong person and they know that. They're extremely unhappy with that person. They're extremely unhappy in their relationship, but they stay for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they're afraid of being alone, or maybe it's because, they're living with that person and they won't have a place to live, etc., etc. I think that not being with the wrong person is better advice than finding the right person. Yeah, so when I was reading this article, I really didn't like that because I don't like the implication that you need a partner to make you happy. And also, I kind of resent how they have written this because they make it sound like you can just go down to the corner store, put a coin in a machine, and you can find the right partner. It's not that easy. It's really not that easy. And actually implying that finding the right partner is going to make you happy is, really damaging in my opinion, because it's really hard to find the right person. So if you're not finding the right person, then what? Are you failing, or are you doing something wrong? I don't know. But, getting into a relationship when you're in a bad place yourself, when you're unhappy yourself, when you're looking to take charge of who you are and you're working on your personal growth, might not always be the best way to go to begin with. Sometimes we need to work on ourselves, and that doesn't mean that you need an external party to be working on you. So I don't like this. I really didn't like that suggestion. I just don't know. I agree that having the right person in your life can make a huge positive difference, but I don't think that it's a requirement for being in charge of your own happiness. I'm going to move on now before I continue ranting about this one. And the next bit of advice that they give in this article is find your sanctuary. And this one I completely agree with. I think that having a safe space that you can call your own and you can kind of look inwards and really, just have your own space that you can relax is super, super important. You need to have a place where you feel safe and comfortable. And I know that a lot of people have I've got my room, or I've got this, or I've got that. But is that really making you feel safe and comfortable? Are you really relaxing? Because I think that a lot of people aren't actually relaxed. Like, for example, there's a couple dishes in my sink right now, and it's making me feel a little bit on edge. But I'm kind of OCD about that thing. But if I'm just sitting here on the sofa or something or whatever, I'm just sitting there trying to relax and there's mess around me, it might not be I'm consciously feeling chaotic, but subconsciously for sure I am. So you have to really consider your space that you're choosing to relax in. Is it actually relaxing for you? Or do you have half-finished projects even, that are making you feel like on edge a bit subconsciously? Sometimes it's not so much about finding a sanctuary as it is creating one. So really take a moment and consider what actually makes you feel safe, comfortable, and relaxed, and maybe create a space where you can do that. Because having a space where you feel safe and comfortable and relaxed is very important to being happy. So you can choose a space that you want to be your sanctuary. And in that space, you should remove the things that make you feel on edge or stressed out. And you should introduce the things that make you feel comfortable and happy. And having that space, if you're a person who wants to try meditation or looking inwards or that kind of thing, then that will really help. It will really help you if you're feeling safe and relaxed. So I think that finding a sanctuary or creating one is super important. And it doesn't have to be an indoor space. It would be great if it is an indoor space because you can visit it at any time, especially if it's in your home. But it can be an outdoor space too. Some people enjoy, hiking the mountains or going into the woods or whatever makes you feel at one with yourself and peaceful inside, and you can really kind of just shed your armor. Shedding your armor after a long day, that's super important. So try to find that space or create it for yourself, and that would really be a big step into finding your own happiness. But creating that space or finding that space for me is personal growth. And I think that that's something that we should be responsible for, is our personal growth. And the next thing on this list, on this article, was choose a job that makes you happy. And I think that this one is ridiculous because it's really not possible for the majority of people. Having unattainable goals is going to be something that makes you very unhappy. Having a goal that you can't reach is going to be a huge source of unhappiness. So I don't know why they include this in an article. I mean, right now with the current job market, at least in the States, you could probably find a job that you don't hate too much because the labor crisis is real. But in general, people who are trying to find like their dream job, it's what, like 2% of people are actually doing their dream job. Maybe it's a little bit more now than it used to be, but the majority of people are not doing their dream job and the other people are unemployed. So I think that choose a job that makes you happy is really not good advice, to be honest, because we all need money. We all have to eat to live, and we all have to have a roof over our heads. So you have to choose a job that is going to support you financially, and that isn't always going to make you happy. However, some bit of advice that can help you with unhappiness is you should work to live, not live to work. So choose a job with a schedule that isn't going to affect your ability to live. I mean, you have to have a life. You have to have a life outside work to be happy. So you have to be able to do the things that you enjoy outside work. And if you're working like 70 hours a week in a job that you don't enjoy, you're not going to have time to do things that you do enjoy. And that has a gigantic impact on happiness. So remember, if you're not doing a job that you love, that your work is so you can afford to do the things that you love to do. Your work is so that you can afford to feed yourself and the people who depend on you. Your work is so that you can have a roof over your head. Your work is not your life. When you clock off at your job, also clock out of your work in your mind. Try to separate the two things, because that is a huge source of unhappiness for a lot of people. They go home from work and they're stressing about work. So try to not do that. Try to build a barrier between what is work and what is living, because once you're clocked out, that's your living time. And try not to forget that, because I know that it's hard to do, and I know that it's a big thing for a lot of people, but you work so that you can live your life, not the other way around. So now we've been through the first 4, and I'm not loving this article at all. I'm not loving the advice that it's giving, and I don't know what to say about that, except for, you can't always take your advice from the internet, even from me. And that leads us to the next bit of advice from this article, which is to don't let others affect your happiness. And I think that it's a ridiculous one. I agree with it in the way that strangers shouldn't affect your happiness. But there's a lot of times where things are going to happen to another person that affects your happiness. And that's called being human. That's called being empathetic. That's called being a compassionate person. So sometimes other people's situations are going to affect your happiness, and that's okay because you're human. I would agree with this if you were in the situation where maybe you have a friend who's constantly negative, constantly tearing you down, constantly, insulting or undermining what you're trying to do. Then I would cut that person out of your life. And that person is affecting your happiness in a way that's unacceptable. But generally, you're going to have people in your life, and maybe they have a situation where, you're feeling bad about it. You wish that there was something that you can do about it. And, that's just called being empathetic and compassionate. And that is okay. So in that way, sometimes people will affect your happiness. But if you work on these other aspects, and you work on your personal growth, and you find your sanctuary, and you have all these other things that are good going for you, then that little bit of unhappiness, like if you're supporting a friend or whatever, isn't going to be a major impact on your overall happiness levels. So I think that, in order to not let other people affect your happiness, then you would have to literally have no people. And in that way, other people would be affecting your happiness by you being lonely. So I really don't like this advice. Except for, like I said, if you have someone who's dragging you down and someone who's constantly being negative around you, you should probably do something about that. And what's really irritating about that bit of advice is that the next bit of advice that they offer is to put family first. So if you put family first, but say that one of your parents or one of your siblings is going through something awful, then that's going to be affecting your happiness, but you're not supposed to let other people affect your happiness. It's very contradictory, So this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that if there's someone who's constantly tearing you down, you don't have to put up with that, and you shouldn't. But if you have relationships in your life at some point, what they're going through, or having an argument with them, or etc. Having a normal relationship, because in every relationship, especially meaningful ones, at some point you're going to have disagreement, and that's going to affect your happiness. So if you want relationships, you have to know what is good for you and what is not, what's acceptable and what is not. You have to draw the line somewhere, and that line is different for everybody. So you have to know what's right for you. But also we have to know and understand that not everybody has family. Not everybody has a family to put first. So again, these kind of blanket theories are not working for everybody. And having these lists of things that you have to do that is going to improve your happiness, it's not going to work for everybody, and in fact is going to be damaging for some people because they aren't able to, or that's not what makes them happy, etc. I'm going to move on now because this podcast is turning into way longer than I anticipated recording today. So the last bit of advice on this article was to exercise freedom. And I think that we basically covered that with the previous topics, exercising freedom. And especially when I'm talking about living your life and not working for your life, exercising your freedom. And I think that that's kind of a too broad of a topic, exercising freedom, because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But the context that I'm going to put it in for the purposes of this podcast is remember that you are free to do things. Remember that you have wants and desires, and you have a list of things that you want to do. Maybe you have a bucket list, and you should do those things. You should start doing those things, or start planning to do those things. If you have a goal that's difficult to do, like you want to travel somewhere far away, for example, and it's really expensive, then start saving for it. Start budgeting for that. Maybe you have the money already and you're just kind of afraid to take that step, especially in today's climate, with the world in the way that it is. Then, take control of that. Take control of your fears, your doubts, etc. And just be free to live your life. Give yourself the space that you need to be free to live your life. I'm going to move on now to my personal advice for people who are struggling with their own happiness, or people who are looking to take control of their own happiness. And my first bit of advice would be to press pause. Give yourself a moment to take a breath, to think about things, to explore what it is that you want and what you need, what it is that you need to create your safe space so that you can start making your personal growth happen. I said before in a previous podcast that, we don't give ourselves time. Everything around us is happening at warp speed. Like, everything is so quick. The pace outside in the world is going so quickly, and I think that a lot of times it's easy to get swept up in that, and it's easy to not give yourself a moment. It feels like we're always in a rush, and you can allow yourself the time and space that you need to just take a minute, take some time for yourself, and just for yourself. It's just for you. For people who spend a lot of time taking care of others, and actually just a lot of people in general focus all of their energy outward to helping other people, taking care of other people, etc. But you have to remember to take care of yourself too. And you can take a minute for that. You can take a minute to actually figure out what it is that you need to take care of yourself. When you're on an airplane and they're telling you how to handle a crisis situation, they always tell you to put your air mask on before helping others. And I think that is kind of an idea that we can apply to our own lives, because you need to be able to breathe before you can help anybody else. So yeah, that's my first bit of advice, is to just press pause. And next, I would recommend having hobbies. Having something that you enjoy doing. You might not be able to do it on a daily basis depending on your schedule, but have something that you enjoy doing and make time for that. Make time to do things that you love to do. We spend a lot of time doing things that we don't like doing, like going to work, for example. So taking time for things that you love and making the time for that is really important to your own internal happiness. If you don't currently have any hobbies, then I would recommend trying things that you think you might enjoy so that you can find something that you truly love doing. I've spoken to a lot of people, and some people don't even know what they like. They don't even know what they like as a hobby. And if that's you, then I would recommend trying something that you enjoyed doing as a child, because that might help you, or at least give you an idea of what you might enjoy doing. Because when we're children, basically we all have stuff that we enjoy doing, whether it's like coloring, maybe you enjoy art then, or if you loved reading, maybe reading books is a great hobby for you, or if you were playing with action figures. I don't know how we translate that to adult, but maybe you could find something that you love doing. Building models or something. My next bit of advice would be to spend time looking inwards, and we've already been talking about that when I said that, press pause and find hobbies, because we aren't always super intimate with ourselves. And that can be an issue, when you're looking at what it takes to make you happy. Do you even know? Do you actually know yourself well enough to know what it takes to make you happy? Because of course we all know what we like and what we don't like, but do you know what truly brings you joy? And if you don't, then I would highly recommend spending some time looking inwards and figuring out what it is that makes you happy. And once you figure that out, it makes being happy a lot easier, because you can identify what it is that makes you happy, and you'll be able to easily identify what it is that makes you unhappy as well. And my next bit of advice would be to forgive yourself. We are our own worst critics, and I find that a lot of people actually hold grudges against themselves as well. If you're a person that holds a grudge against yourself, maybe you don't even know that you're holding a grudge against yourself. If you've ever had the thought oh, I deserve this, when something bad happens, then you're probably holding a grudge against yourself. So we need to be able to forgive ourselves for our mistakes, just like we forgive other people for their mistakes. So forgiving yourself is a hugely important part of being happy. Because if you're not happy with yourself, how can you just be happy in general? And my last bit of advice would be to remember. I know we spend a lot of time talking about not looking back and looking forward because the past already happened and the future is in front of you, etc. But sometimes if you're going through a hard time and if you're feeling really unhappy, it can be helpful to remember what made you happy in the past, or remember times that you were feeling really happy, because then you can kind of, identify what made you happy and what didn't make you happy. So I think that for the purposes of, exploring yourself and exploring what makes you feel good and what doesn't, looking back and remembering is important. We have memories for a reason. You shouldn't dwell on mistakes that you made. You shouldn't dwell on bad things that happened. They are a teachable moment. They are life's little lessons. You can learn from them. But remembering times that you are happy, especially when you're struggling, it can remind you that good things can happen too, that you can be happy too, that, it's not going to be like this forever. So I think that that's really important sometimes to remember. And it might be the easiest thing that I've suggested because it takes no effort at all. If you're struggling to do any of the other things that I suggested, then at least just recalling a memory from your mind is a very simple thing to do. And it might help you. It might really help. So I don't think that being responsible for your own happiness is a thing as much as being responsible for your own personal growth and actually trying to grow as a person is a thing. And I think it's something that we all can do. And I think it's something that we all should do. Take a moment to take stock and make a plan, make goals, figure out what you want to do, figure out who you want to be, and grow into that. And if you made it this far, then I just want to thank you for listening because I did go off onto a rant a couple of times there. For anyone who is interested, I actually did finish my website and the link will be in the description. It's still a work in progress, but it is working, so that's great. There will also be links in the description to all of my social medias. And if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, then I would ask that you please subscribe or follow me depending on which platform you're listening on, because it really does help me out and it really means a lot to me. And if you want to share your opinions with me on anything that I talked about today, I would really encourage that. I'd love to hear from you. So leave a comment or reach out to me on one of my social media accounts. And just thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you have a great day. See you next time. Bye.